Yes, start please.
हाँ मैडम, अनस्थेटिस्ट आ गया है, वेटिंग वेटिंग फॉर सर्जरी है। वो प्रभाकर शंकर पांडे ज्वाइन किया है।
Okay.
अनस्थेटिस्ट इज वेटिंग। यस, डॉक्टर शेखर इंट्रोड्यूस करके स्टार्ट कर लीजिए।
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I, Dr. Shekhar Patel, MS Final Year Scholars, National Institute of Ayurveda, Jaipur. I welcome you all. I am a member of NSA, and I request to all the participants, PG, PhD scholars, to please register yourselves in NSA. Do visit national and register yourselves. As the chain of regular evening class conducted by National Shishut Association with the collaboration of Parul University, today we have one topic on abdominal hysterectomy, and the today's guest speaker we have Dr. Mamta KV Madam, MS, PhD in Diploma in Yoga. She is a medical superintendent, professor, Department of Prasuti Consultancy Groups, SDM College of Ayurveda, and Hospital, Udupi, Karnataka. She did her BMS in 1993, AVM, AMB, Hubli, Karnataka University, and MD in 1993 at PHU Varanasi. She also did her certificate course and diploma in yoga in 1994, PHU Varanasi, and she did her PhD in 2010 at NIA Jaipur. She has awarded many awards, gold medal in final year BMS from Karnataka University, also awarded as a young scientist in Komar 2006 international seminar held at SDM College, Hassan. She also awarded as outstanding alumni by the Alumni Association of AMB Hubli at 2012. Academic activities, she guided more than 32 PG dissertation and one PhD in guiding 2 PhD works. She did, as a part of many researches, she completed a pilot study on pelvic inflammatory disease funded by SDM Educational Society, completed a study on Garbhini Rasayan funded by Rajiv Gandhi University, Bangalore, awarded with a 60 lakh Center of Excellence project from the Vision Group of Science and Technology, Government of Karnataka. She has a part of project of 13 lakhs from Rajiv Gandhi University funded by Department of Ayush for the study of PCOS. Paper presentation, she published several research articles in the peer-reviewed journals, took part in several national seminars, workshops, CMEs, R2PS as a resource person, extended activities and many achievements like resource persons for Bharti Vikas Trust, a NGO serving for social welfare, Women Technology Park, Adolescents Health Education. These are resource person for Dharmstal Rural Development Scheme, Stri Shakti Help, Self-Help Groups, resource person for Ayush Gram program. She actively involved in public health programs and delivered more than 400 guest lectures at various health program talk, mainly on infertility, women and health, child health, adolescent health, care during pregnancy, and care after delivery. She has given several talks in radio, television regarding women and adolescent health, published several cover pages article on health on the leading local magazines. She has many expertise in actively taking part in running the labor room at SDM hospital and performing surgeries of obstetrics and gynecology. Served as chairman of scientific committee of several national and international seminars held at SDM College of Ayurveda, Udupi. Is an organizing secretary of Sheshi, a national level seminar held at SDM College of Ayurveda, Udupi in Feb 2016. Is an chief organizing secretary of Shringar, a national level seminar at SDM College of Ayurveda, Udupi in March 2018, Ayurveda Cosmetology. Is an chief organizing secretary, Innovation 2018 at state level workshop on colposcopy. I welcome you all. I welcome you, madam. And I request you, please proceed with your talk. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar, for your nice words. Good evening, everyone. My namaste to all the senior members of Sushruta Association, my friends, and dear students. So, abdominal hysterectomy is the topic given to me. You may ask me where is the reference of this abdominal hysterectomy in Ayurvedic classics. While dealing about the descent of uterus, Acharyas very clearly mentioned Nigdasvinna tatha yonim dustitam stapayet punam. Then further they say that Shalyabhuta Swasthana Chuta Yoni is Shalya Bhuta Mata Striyaha. So wherever the word Shalya has come, so the only indication, only therapy is Shalya Nirharana here. So this is an indirect reference of abdominal hysterectomy mentioned in the chapter of Yoni Vyapar while discussing about Misrita Yoni or Sthanachyuta Yoni. So Sthanachyuta Yoni acts as Shalya in the female body. That is why Shalya Niraharana is the chikitsa advocated for such Sthanachyuta Yoni. With this brief introduction, let us proceed. As Hemant sir told that anesthetist is waiting, let us not waste his time. So hysterectomy word has derived from two words. One is hystera, that is uterus, and ectomy is accession. This is the second most common surgery among the women, first being cesarean section. So the definition of hysterectomy goes as it is the operation of excising the uterus. The excision may be done through several routes. One is through the abdominal route, other is through the vaginal route. Third one is now laparoscopic hysterectomy, and fourth, which is the most common, is now laparoscopy assisted vaginal hysterectomy. Partly the release of the clamps are done, release of the stumps are done through the laparoscopic intervention, and the uterus is removed through the vaginal intervention. This is becoming the most common surgery or most common approach of hysterectomy in recent days. While discussing about what are the types of hysterectomy, we come across the surgeries like one is subtotal or partial hysterectomy, where leaving the cervix in situ, fundus and body of the uterus are removed. This is done mostly wherever there is a lot of innervation, there is difficulty in dissection of the cervix. In these conditions or some unexpected complications when they arise while doing the hysterectomy, this partial or subtotal hysterectomy is performed. Next is the total hysterectomy, where entire uterus with its cervix is removed. Next is pan-abdominal hysterectomy. In this kind of hysterectomy, bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is clubbed with the uterus, and it is abbreviated as total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, TAH and BSO. Then comes the radical hysterectomy, which is done for the cancer of the uterus, and this surgery is associated with the removal of the uterus along with the cervix, upper part of the vagina, and its surrounding tissues. Depending on the removal part, the removal of the tissues, this radical hysterectomy can be divided as 5 classes. So, where in first class 1, extrafacial hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is done, and in class 5, portions of the distal ureter and bladder are also dissected. This is the class 5 variety of radical hysterectomy. Coming to when we indicate hysterectomy to the patients. Grossly, we can say the indications as many a times we have to do the hysterectomy to save the life of the patient, such as in malignant indications like cancer of any genital organ, that is cervix, ovary, endometrium, sarcomas, choriocarcinoma. It may be sometimes when the uterus is accidentally perforated or there is a large extending cervical tear, during labor and it is extending, or due to some injury extending to the uterus where repair is not possible and the patient is bleeding profusely in such conditions, or sometimes in obstetrical areas where rupture of the uterus has taken place, atonic PPH is continuing in spite of all measures to stop this excessive bleeding. Then in case of morbidly adherent placenta, where removal of the placenta is not possible, or in cases of hereditary form mole pregnancy above 35 years of patient who is aged above 35 years, or in cases of recurrent hereditary form mole with completed family, in such conditions also we can opt for the cystectomy to avoid the chances of development of choriocarcinoma in these patients. And sometimes The hysterectomy is indicated for the benign reasons, but removal of the uterus will help many times to improve the quality of life instead of patient having a lot of problems by keeping these lesions inside. Uh, Cutting and throwing out the uterus becomes an easier option in many conditions. But fortunately, we being Ayurvedic surgeons, we can have always a precision where with our Ayurvedic medicines, many of the conditions we can cure without hysterectomy. Though I have listed them under the indication of improve the quality of life under the indications of hysterectomy, most of the conditions which are listed here can be treated with the Ayurvedic medication. These indications may be dysfunctional uterine bleeding, fibroid uterus, chronic and resistant pelvic inflammatory disease, and chronic and resistant leukorrheas, tubomas, tubo-ovarian masses, endometriosis, severe symptomatic endometriosis or adenomyosis, CIN of grade 3 and above should be indicated for hysterectomy. Sometimes to correct the problems that interfere with the normal life of the patient, though they are not having any problem, it will be intervening with her daily activities. That is why in case of uterine prolapse, advanced stages of uterine prolapse, then if the patient is insane or she is having serious psychological disorder where her menstrual hygiene cannot be maintained and which looks odd to the surrounding public, then it can be indicated. Then in cases of children with mental retardation who are menstruating, they don't know what is menstruation, how to maintain the hygiene in these patients, and severe epileptic patients where convulsion is more than 5 to 6 times a day, and because of that, of course, there will be some sort of mental problem and patient cannot maintain her hygiene or cannot understand what is going on in her body. In these conditions also, hysterectomy may be indicated under the eugenic causes. And in case of recurrent postmenopausal bleeding also, for the fear of turning it into malignancy, we take it up for hysterectomy. And when we are going for the choice of route, we have an option of abdominal, vaginal laparoscopy or laparoscopy-assisted vaginal hysterectomy. Most often, where we go for abdominal route of hysterectomy is usually where there is significant uterine enlargement. Uterus cannot be pulled down through the vaginal route, where transvaginal access is inadequate for the size of the uterus, or it may be adnexal pathology, and adnexal fixity may be due to endometriosis, may be due to adnexal cysts or tumors, may be due to chronic pelvic pain because of previous surgery or because of previous chronic pelvic inflammatory disease. A lot of adhesion has been formed in the around the uterus, and because of which dissection in case of vaginal hysterectomy or when we are doing laparoscopic or laparoscopy assisted hysterectomy becomes very difficult. In these conditions, we are opting for abdominal hysterectomy route. When we discuss about what are the advantages of abdominal route versus vaginal route, we get the advantages like there is wide scope for exploration. Any tubo-ovarian pathology, if it is there in the abdomen, we can very easily tackle this because there is Pratyaksha Pramana. It is not only by palpation like Anumana Pramana we do in vaginal hysterectomy. We can inspect other nearby abdominal viscera so that we can identify the pathology. If anything is there, simultaneously we can club these two surgeries also. Then if there is any unexpected hemorrhage or any kind of tumors or adhesions, anything, it can be very easily and capably handled when the surgery is opted through the abdominal route. There is a saying that however expert the surgeon may be, in his lifetime once or twice, if he has started the surgery, hysterectomy through the vaginal route, he will end up with abdominal hysterectomy. This clearly says what is the importance, or it says that the clarity we get in abdominal route by doing the hysterectomy. At the same time, we have some disadvantages like in obese patients because of a very thick fat layer, dissection becomes almost difficult, or you will feel like you are working through some caves, working in some caves. Then the post-operative complications, since you are directly interfering or handling the intestines here, abdominal viscera here, post-operative complication rates are higher, morbidity rates are also higher. Hernia-like complications can also be seen in the post-operative period. Pain and other complications in the post-operative period is higher. Scar is permanent on the abdominal wall, particularly when, because it is in the female folk, the cosmetic point definitely bothers them since there is a scar on the abdomen. But since nowadays the surgery is done on the lower abdomen with a transverse incision, the cosmetic purpose is cosmetic indications, or you can say cosmetic point of view, even the abdominal hysterectomy will be equally with the vaginal hysterectomy. And for patients, it will be vaginal hysterectomy will be literally a stitchless surgery, whereas abdominal hysterectomy, they will count the stitches and they say these many stitches were there on my tummy. Then the question when hysterectomy starts, which arises, is whether to preserve the ovaries or not. The question is, if one ovary is there, then it can take up the load of both the ovaries. It will secrete sufficient amount of estrogen, progesterone to suffice or to look after the functions of these hormones in the post-operative period, post-hysterectomy period also. So it is almost a rule now that whatever may be the condition, if the ovaries, both ovaries are healthy, even then one ovary is removed because the remaining one ovary is functionally adequate to look after the functions of these two ovaries, one thing. And by taking out this one ovary, you are reducing the possibilities of development of ovarian pathologies in future to the extent of 50%. So the risks in keeping the preserving the ovaries in situ are chances of malignancy or benign neoplasms are very high. Last week only we saw a patient who is around 85 years old who underwent hysterectomy 30 years back. Now she has presented with ovarian carcinoma, ascites, and pleural effusion, that is Meigs, classical feature of Meigs syndrome. So this possibility is always there when we are retaining the ovary while doing the hysterectomy. The remaining ovary, if the blood circulation is not properly ensured while retaining this ovary, the residual ovarian or residual adnexal syndrome can be a constant irritation to the surgeon, wherein patient presents with pain in the lower abdomen, and subsequent operations may be required to overcome this malignancy or to give solution to this residual ovarian syndrome, etc., etc. That is a complication or the risk what we can expect in preserving the ovaries. Then if we retain the ovary, then we have some benefits such as menopausal symptoms appear less, or if you are doing hysterectomy around 40 years and the menopausal symptoms menopausal symptoms may take another 10 to 15 years to appear. So these for 10 to 15 years patient can be symptom free. She need not be put on HRT or any other kind of treatment because the ovary is taking care of all these hormonal functions regularly. Then you will be providing protection to the patient against coronary atherosclerosis and osteoporosis like conditions. That is the benefit what we get by preserving the ovary. Then even we have, of course, estrogen is considered to be or is attributed with so many functions, like it is a euphoric hormone, all sexual desires, etc. are maintained through this estrogen hormone. Brain function is also integral part of its functioning. So all these, of course, benefits we have attributed to estrogen hormone now. So that will be always there that we can take on a positive side of retaining the ovaries. Then whatever may be risks or benefits, one thing we have to consider as a special case whenever there is a strong family history of cancer in that patient. So any family history of having a cancer in the genital organs or adjacent organs, it's wise to remove the ovaries rather than removing them. Then, if the patient's indication for hysterectomy is endometriosis, then unless and until you remove both the ovaries, you cannot give solution to the patient. Because as long as ovary is there, there is endometriosis. Even though you remove the uterus or even though the uterus is in situ, patient is not going to be relieved of her symptoms of endometriosis. Hence, it is very, very essential to remove both the ovaries in cases of endometriosis. There is no compromise in this particular condition for it, and there is no indication to retain the ovaries. Then coming to the preoperative preparations, counseling plays a very important role in hysterectomy because for a female, uterus signifies her femininity. Removal of uterus many a times may sound that it's end of her femininity and it's end of her marital relations. If not wife, sometimes patient's husband may be of the impression that if the uterus is removed, wife is of no use for him. So it's not only the patient, even patient's spouse is to be thoroughly convinced, counseled, and they should be very clearly explained what are the organs you are going to be removed, what is its impact, what all functions they can carry out without any hesitation, and how long they have to give the rest to the patient, because in most of the houses, woman is the only one who attends everyone's need. After hysterectomy, within a week or month or 15 days or something, if the patient is resuming her duties at home back, then sometimes the complications of surgery you can expect at a larger incidence rather than a patient who is taking adequate rest. So this part of counseling is very important, and if you have not explained regarding this to the patient in the late postoperative period, it is very common to see patients' psychological breakdown, patient going into depression, many a times patient feeling herself worthless. So this kind of complications may be anticipated. So counseling plays a very important role. At the same time, it's not only the counseling for this particular aspect of hysterectomy, even you can give her many options, because in some of the conditions you have an option of endometrial abrasion for excessive bleeding. You can go for other options of treatment also. You have to ask the patient for whether her decision is only in favor of endometrial hysterectomy, or she would like to go for endometrial ablation or any other kind of treatment, if particularly the indication for surgery is excessive bleeding. Right? Endometrial ablation can also be an option there, or insertion of Mirena like contraceptive, Mirena like intrauterine devices can also be an option. Once you do the surgery, after that, if the patient is convinced by some other doctors or somebody else regarding ablation or Mirena insertion, then she should not think that you have done surgery for your benefit, not for her benefit. This is one important aspect we have to consider. Then investigation and fitness of the surgery. It's like any other surgery, abdominal major surgery. All the investigations need to be done, especially abdominal ultrasonography or transvaginal ultrasonography is to be done, performed to explore some unknown complications, unknown pathologies which may be present. Sometimes a single kidney may be identified before surgery. So like this, any other, or when you are opting for surgery and you identify some liver pathology or some other other associated complications in the patient. And fitness of the patient with these investigations and the anesthetist opinion is very essential before you opt for any surgery. So that is a routine. I'm not going to explain about it. Preparation of surgical site, as with any other surgery we need to do bowel preparations. A double enema is always preferable on the previous night and on the next day morning, or else like the modern trend now, laxative may be prescribed on the previous night, so that patient will have a clear bowel movement, and the next day morning also, either next day morning you may go for an enema or not. Then insertion of any bladder pathologies you rule out, and catheterization, just like any pre-operative preparations. On the previous night, particularly it is female folk, they will be very tensed. So you cannot take the surgery as a routine surgery, which is for you, but for female, it is an important deciding surgery of her life. So most often you need to give her some anxiolytics. It may be a Brahmivati, it may be a Saraswatarishta, or whatever it may be. You have to ensure that she will have a good sleep, which definitely will help to our help to in for the help for the induction of anesthesia. Even on the next day, she will not be anxious while entering the OT premises. A prophylactic antibiotic, again, it depends on how sterile your atmosphere is. When PGs were not there in our institution, we were conducting hysterectomies with only one dose, one shot of prophylactic antibiotic. On just 1 hour before surgery, we used to give one shot of antibiotic. Then in the entire post-operative period, we never used any antibiotics. Only Triflagogulo and Prasina, this was sufficient in uncomplicated hysterectomies. Of course, when PGs started coming, PGs entered into the department, PGs started sharing the surgical steps with us. Then, of course, we are not taking the risk now too much. That is there. That depends on your confidence on the environment, sterile preparations, antiseptic precautions you take, patient's condition. It depends on so many factors. So, what antibiotic, how long, it's your decision. Then entering into the operative steps, after routine part preparation, draping, etc., etc., the incision, we have a choice. One is in the lower abdominal incision, and another is vertical incision on the abdomen. Now, nobody goes for the vertical incision. Usually, we opt for the lower incision, lower abdominal transverse incision. The advantages of lower abdominal transverse incision is it goes with the lines of abdomen. One, second, it is cosmetically very much preferable. Access is better to the lower abdomen, but when the tumor is very big, it crosses the level of umbilicus, then probably it may be difficult to bring out the specimen through a transverse incision. One, second thing, there may be limited space when compared to abdominal vertical incision, or you can extend the vertical incision in case of need even beyond the umbilicus, whereas in this transverse incision you cannot go for that. That is the limitation we have, but usually the gynecological surgeries are now being carried out with the transverse lower abdominal transverse incision. It is the convenient and very ideal incision for almost all the gynecological surgeries. So abdomen is opened in layers. Bladder retraction is done with our Sarpafana yantra, we can say, or Doyen's retractor is used for the bladder retraction. So beginners even can use the abdominal retractor so that the abdominal walls stay retracted very well without interfering with your surgical area or surgical field. Then if needed, it depends on again your skill, that intestinal packing can be done. And whenever the intestines are poking into the surgical area, it diverts your concentration, and intestines without being disturbed. If you want to carry out the surgery, it's better to pack the intestines than to opt for proceeding into the surgery. Or if you want minimize injury to the intestine, you can just keep them away from your surgical area, and you can lift the specimen up from the abdominal wound, and you can do your surgery, keeping the intestines at a safer distance. Once intestines are kept away from the incision, at this juncture, your PV findings, whatever you have done before posting this patient to the surgery or after induction of anesthesia or deep vaginal examination which you have done, can be reassessed to see what is the extent of adhesions the uterus is having, what is the extent of pelvic pathology there in the uterus and surrounding tissues of the uterus. Once it happened with me that we tried opening when we tried lifting the uterus was so much cemented to the sigmoid colon because of previous surgery. Then there was endometriosis also. Previous two cesarean sections were there, and patient had endometriosis also. We could not even move the uterus from the sigmoid colon. That adherent it was. I called, of course, my senior here, Muralidhar Sharma sir. He also suggested, recommended that it is not wise to uh, separate this here now at this juncture. That is one incident where I opened the abdomen for hysterectomy, but I could not do the hysterectomy, and we closed the abdomen like that only. And of course, it was a hurried decision because the patient did not had much time also. Otherwise, we could have treated the patient with some danazol like an androgenic hormones, wherein adhesions would have removed, endometriotic adhesions could have been removed, but of course surgical adhesions could not be, and it was so thoroughly adherent to the posterior and side walls that the dissection was definitely leading to some injury to the, probably to the side walls of the pelvis, or it can also be said that I was not that competent then to think about all these things, and I closed it as such. Then of course you assess what is the extent of adhesion, what is the size of the uterus, what is the condition of the ovaries. At the same time, you can also make a decision whether one ovary is to be removed, both ovaries are to be removed, both ovaries are to be retained. These decisions you can make. Then it will give, this examination will give you the extent of difficulty of the surgery as well. At this juncture only, you can predict what is the time which is going to consume for this particular surgery. All this you can assess with this thorough examination. Once you start mobilizing the uterus, now you pull out the uterus on the abdominal wound. So now the uterus is freely available for detaching it from its surrounding tissues, and you can do this without interfering without the interference of surrounding viscera. So it's very ideal step. Usually some surgeons do the surgery when the uterus is still inside the pelvis only. Of course, if you are expert to that extent, it is ideal. It disturbs the structures to the minimum, very minimum. But for the beginners, it is ideal to pull out the uterus on the abdominal wound and then to proceed for clamping the pedicles. Right? Our first clamp will be on round ligament. There is again a slight variation. You can identify the round ligaments first. You can clamp them and you can cut them. You can transfix them in one set. That is one thing. Second thing is you can identify round ligament, tubes, ovarian ligament with the mesosalpinx covering them in a single stretch. This can also be done. Right? So it's up to you. Before doing this, you can identify a clear window in the mesosalpinx. So at this clear window of the mesosalpinx, you can pierce with your Porcher's clamp, swastika yantra. Then you place the clamp on these structures. At a stretch, all these three structures can be clamped together also. So clamp them. Usually in hysterectomy, we use 3 clamps, 1 on the specimen side and 2 on the body side, to be in the safer side that the clamp will not get away. This clamp on the body side will not slip away, giving rise to complications. So 2 clamps usually are kept on the body side, and in between the most medial clamp and the next middle clamp, cut the structures and transfix them. While they're doing this, you have to take care that the clamps should be, if you are going to retain the ovaries, the clamp should be very much closer to the uterine side in order to preserve the blood supply to the ovaries. At the same time, if you are doing hysterectomy with salpingo-oophorectomy, here your clamp will be placed on the infundibulopelvic ligament. So while placing the clamp on infundibulopelvic ligament, again, you should not twist this infundibulopelvic ligament. You should not stretch the infundibulopelvic ligament too much. So whenever you are handling tissue, you have to give respect to the tissue, so that tissue will also respect you by not producing complications too much in the post-operative period. So whenever you are retaining the ovary, it's very essential to see that you will not clamp the ovarian vessels or the vessels which are traversing to the ovary in the meso-ovarium. So this, if you are not taking care of, it will give rise to problematic residual head neck cell syndrome. So the same procedure what you have done on one side is to be repeated on the opposite side also. Now we are taken out the first clamp, first pedicle on either sides. So next is the free on either sides. By removing these structures, by cutting these structures, you have made an opening in the broad ligament, layer of the broad ligament. So you can see windows on the broad ligament on either sides. Windows are created now, or opening is created. From one side of this broad ligament, you go to the opposite side of the broad ligament in a crescent shaped manner, that its incision is taken in a half moon or crescent shaped manner from one side of the opened broad ligament to the next, its contralateral side of the broad ligament. So while taking this incision, you have to go on the isthmus level, you have to reach up to the isthmus level. So till the isthmus level, that is the area where the peritoneum is loose. At this isthmic level, that is the reflection level of bladder reflection, the peritoneum which has covered the bladder, then it has made a pubocervical pouch, vesico-cervical pouch, you can also call it as vesico-cervical pouch. So from here it is entering, or it is fixing on the uterine at the until the level of isthmus, it will be loose. So from above this level, it will be adherent, or it will be continuing as parietal peritoneum, visceral peritoneum. So it will be adherent on the uterine wall. So at this juncture of loose pelvic peritoneum only, you have to incise it with a sharp dissection. So once you have incised this peritoneal layer, now you have to separate the peritoneum along with the bladder. This step is bladder reflection now. So you have to push down the bladder now from the upper cervix with the blunt and sharp dissection. So only peritoneum can be separated and pushed down with a blunt resection or dissection. But when you are coming across the pubocervical ligament, thickened facial layer there, you may have to go for Caesar dissection here. So in the central line, you can see just two pillar-like, or the two ligament-like stretchings of this extensions of the peritoneum only. So that you have to separate with a sharp dissection, and then push it down as much as possible, if possible, until the anterior vaginal wall, and keep a Doyne's retractor to keep away the bladder which is held by your assistant. Same thing may be repeated on the same thing is reflected over the posterior peritoneum also. Posterior peritoneum is cut from one side to another side. While cutting this, you will come across uterosacral. While separating this downwards and pushing it downwards, you will come across uterosacral ligament. Unlike the pubocervical are not very visible. Only with the sharp dissection you are cutting them. But uterosacral ligaments, you can literally feel that they are the ligamentous structures there. You can incise them and you can identify them, and you can keep them identified with some means, so that while doing the while closing the vault, these uterosacral ligaments can be attached to the vault later for prevention of vault prolapse. So uterosacral ligaments may be identified here and kept separate. Then once the lower uterine segment is cleared of the peritoneal covering, now you can visualize the uterine artery which is traversing from lateral side branch of internal iliac artery. Now it is entering at the level of isthmus, that is the internal os of the cervix. Internal os of the cervix, it travels transversely and enters into the uterine. It turns sharply around 90-degree angle to travel around the uterine side wall, right? So very clearly you can visualize this tortuous route of uterine artery on either sides of the body of the uterus, right? After identification, you clamp this uterine artery. So there are two techniques. What in Banaras they were doing, my teachers were doing was the uterine artery was clamped along with a small portion of cervical tissue. This step, of course, is to be practiced in 100% sure cases of benign conditions because these few cervical fibers which were attached or left along with or cut along with the uterine artery will give you a extra protection to this uterine artery from slipping away. That is one extra benefit by including this little tissue from the cervix. But wherever it is done for any suspected malignancy or CIN-like conditions, definitely we would not recommend you to include any of the cervical fibers. Rather, you identify precisely the uterine arteries, you clamp them very firm, and then you of course, again, three clamps are to be used for uterine artery also, and cut them very safely, then transfix it, right? So same thing is repeated on the other side. So now much vascularity of the uterus is now removed. So of course, when you are after transfixation of one side, on the specimen side, you may have a suture, you may leave it with the instrument only. When you leave the clamped with the instrument, maybe your surgical field will be messy with too many instruments. But if you are fast in surgery, these will not catch your attention. Rather, it will save your some time in the surgical procedure, surgical process. Then complete the dissection of, next step is to complete the dissection of bladder. If you have not reached until the anterior vaginal wall, push down the bladder further. Identify the part of the endopelvic fascia here. The next clamp, second clamp is uterine artery. The third stump in hysterectomy, abdominal hysterectomy, is the McEnroth's ligament. So identify the McEnroth's ligament. They are nothing but the thickened endopelvic fascia which runs around the surrounding the on the lateral side of the cervix. It is also called as cardinal ligament. Identify them and clamp them, cut and transfix. So if this cardinal ligament is not properly identified, and if you have not reached until the anterior vaginal wall, sometimes the ascending branch of the vaginal artery into the cervix may give rise to bleeding in this while opening the vaginal wall. So be sure that your dissection on the side walls is enough to reach the vaginal wall. Until the vaginal wall, you have to separate the McEnroth's and surrounding broad ligamental layer. So if once this is done, now entirely the uterus is free from all other attachments other than its vaginal cuff. So the next step here is a stab incision. Through a stab incision, after identifying the anterior vaginal fornix, you can give a straight stab incision on the anterior vaginal fornix, which has to enter into the vaginal cavity. So once you get a feeling of entering into a hollow, that is the confirmation that you have opened the vagina. Sometimes if your direction of the sensation is wrong, you may pierce into the cervix and be entangled in finding out what is the correct cleavage line here. Once you have opened the anterior vaginal cuff, you go around the cervix, you separate the vaginal fornix around the cervix, and now the uterus is separated from the vaginal portion, and the specimen is given to assistant in order to send for histopathological examination. Remember, whatever the symptom of the patient, in today's day practice, it is very ideal to send the specimen for a histopathological examination. Otherwise, tomorrow there may be, if any other problem arises in the patient, she may come back and ask you, what is the report of that hysterectomy or that uterus, what you have sent or why you have not sent. the specimen, all these questions may arise. So it's a better decision without thinking the money spent on this histopathological examination, thinking about what compensation you have to give if you have not sent it to histopathological examination. It's better to send the specimen for histopathological examination. Now the vaginal cuff is open, which gives a glimpse of vaginal canal. Here, before one step you can do is before opening after giving that stab incision, you can fill the vaginal canal with some betadine soaked gauze, so that the collection which is during the surgery or sometimes the collection which is collected inside the vaginal canal will not come up into the peritoneal cavity. So you can pack the vaginal canal. It gives vagina a little structure like a filledness, so that while suturing the vaginal cuff, it will help you to some extent. So there are two varieties. One is margins of the vagina is continuously reefed. Reefing suture is placed, continuous locking suture is placed, keeping the vaginal cuff open. One option. Or some surgeons approximate anterior vaginal wall with the posterior vaginal wall. Both are ideal. When you keep the vaginal wall open, you can very clearly see if there is any collection above the vaginal wall, that will be drained down. It will be left open and it will be draining down. When you close the vaginal wall, the length of the vaginal canal becomes little shorter, and deep penetration in the post-operative period during the coitus may give rise to some pain in this condition. So keeping it open will prevent it further from cuff cellulitis, abscess, hematoma formation, etc. So it's up to the surgeon's choice whether the cuff of the vagina, vault of the vagina, should be kept open or it can be closed. After this, as I discussed earlier, this vaginal cuff can be connected through the uterosacral ligaments through a connecting stitch. It is just a connecting stitch, uterosacral ligament, and it's also called as posterior faldoplasty, wherein uterosacral ligament is attached both on either side. Uterosacral ligaments are attached to the edges of this vaginal cuff, so that the vagina will be kept straight, or it will not be allowed to have prolapse or vault prolapse in the future. So then peritonization is done. Suture is placed around the pelvic peritoneum. So this, while suturing the pelvic peritoneum, as I have shown in the picture here, so the vascular pedicles should be inverted in such a way that the open surfaces of these vascular pedicles are not directed into the intraperitoneal cavity, rather they are made retroperitoneal. So making this retroperitonealization of the suture or the pedicles will help you to diagnose if there is any bleeding, occult intraperitoneal bleeding, and not intraperitoneal now, it is retroperitoneal now, extraperitoneal. So any bleeding you can very sharply identify, very clearly identify, and it will further avoid adhesion formations with these open pedicles. Then yes, peritonization once done is completed. The surgical steps are completed. Ensure hemostasis. If there are any packings left in the abdominal cavity, just remove them. Abdominal dilating is to be done. Close the abdomen in layers and place the bandage. In the post-operative care, as routine IV fluids, within 24 hours we conclude all the IV fluids. We start oral fluids, oral sips to the patient, and antibiotics and analgesics as per surgeon's decision. Monitor the vitals. IO chart is to be maintained. Then encourage early ambulation as in any other surgery. Before discharge, you instruct the patient again very clearly about diet, exercises, marital relations, which is very important since your client is a female. Then coming to the complications in the intraoperative period, most important, violations will be a problem. Sometimes unforeseen hemorrhage can complicate, and sometimes there can even be visceral injuries. Then in the post-operative period, immediate post-operative period, if patient is having vomiting, raise of intra-abdominal pressure, slipping of the clamps may be a problem, anesthetic complications. peritonitis, paralytic ileus, intestinal, all these complications, intestinal related complications may be there. Then intermediate period, since you have catheterized urinary complications, fistula may or may not get separated. If there is any formation of vesicovaginal or rectovaginal fistulas, it may even present at a later date. Wound infection or destruction of the wound may be a problem. In the late complications, sometimes overgranulation tissue developed in the vaginal cuff. Usually when you close the cuff, then there will be overgranulation. Then bleeding from that overgranulation tissue, sometimes the hernia in abdominal hysterectomy wound, then usually in the transverse incision, hernia chances are less. Late complications like menopausal symptoms may appear, psychological issues may develop in a female, and vault prolapse, cystocele, in secondary cystocele or rectocele may be a late complication we see in these patients. I have a small video to play here of hysterectomy, of course not done by me, it is not done by me. And meanwhile, I think you can also ask the questions if any. This is the ovarian ligament, one clamp on the tube, one clamp on the round ligament. Now they are going to remove the tube, so they are placing the clamp in such a way that the tube is removed. Cut. Tube is removed, but the ovaries are retained here. Same thing is repeated on the opposite side also. A small obstruction. Directly went to specimen removal. Reefing suture around the vaginal cuff is being placed here. Vaginal cuff is closed with a reefing suture. Here a urinary catheter is placed for draining. So any collection inside this peritoneum, below the peritoneum now, will be collected or will be drained out through this rectum, through this catheter. This kind of it. So hope I have given justice to the topic which is given to me by Sushruta Association. I thank Parul University. I thank both Hemant's principal, Parul University Secretary, Sushruta Association, and all the senior members of Sushruta Association, my teachers at BHU who enabled me or who guided me, who trained me to do these surgeries. My sincere thanks and namaste to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation. It is very well informed and appreciable lecture was there. Ma'am, there are some questions are in the chat box. Shall we take it?
Yes, sure.
And I request to all the participants, those who have any type of query, please drop your question in the chat box. Ma'am, Dr. Ankit Pandey wants to know what is the cause of vaginal cuff dehiscence and treatment.
Vaginal cuff dehiscence is because of any infection. If there is any vaginal vault infection, there can be dehiscence in the wound. That is why if you suture, usually if there is a hematoma in the cuff, that can also lead to improper healing, improper approximation of that. So without suturing them, making them a refit suture and keeping the cuff open is the better option in such conditions.
Ma'am, there are many more participants are congratulating you. Dr. Pushpalata madam is there saying that very informative and nice presentation, dear ma'am.
Thank you,
And Dr. NH Kulkarni sir is congratulating you, ma'am.
Okay.
I request to participants, if any more questions are there, please. Ma'am, another question is there.
Okay.
Dr. Pratibha Malak wants to know which exercise we should do after hysterectomy.
Usually 1 month we do not advise any exercises. For 3 months, very minimal activities we recommend. Any exercises which increases the intra-abdominal pressure definitely are not indicated for 1 month, at least for 1 month. Then gradually all normal exercises may be slowly resumed back as per the advice of physiotherapist.
Ma'am, Dr. Manpreet wants to know in which conditions we can manage by the Ayurveda treatment like size of fibroids.
The symptomatic relief can be given in most, whatever may be the size, the symptomatic relief can be given in fibroid uterus. But the thing is, if the size of the fibroid increases to such an extent, or it even depends on the site of this fibroid also. If it is exactly just behind the bladder, and the fibroid is, if it is pressing the bladder, patient may develop the complaints of urinary frequency, etc., incomplete voiding. There, even if the size is small, you cannot do anything. It is a mechanical pressure. Same way, if it is on the posterior wall, then posterior vagina, posterior, it will be exerting pressure on the rectum. Then also incomplete defecation will be the complaint. Tenesmus may be there. So here again, you cannot do anything. And if it is pressing intestines, if it becomes that large that it develops constipation or pressure symptoms, then also you cannot do anything. That is the problem. Otherwise, symptomatic treatment can be given in all sizes, except mechanical problems of this fibroid uterus.
Murlidhar sir is congratulating you, ma'am, and saying very nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta sir wants to know if we don't close vaginal vault during surgery, what complication may occur?
Nothing, sir. That is what I explained. No complication will appear because you are closing the peritoneum above the cuff, and the cuff you are pulling up and making it out straight. Vaginal canal you are keeping straight, but connecting it with the uterosacral ligaments. Even some of them connect it with the Meckeln rods also. Not only uterosacral ligament, Meckeln rods is also connected to the vault of the uterus so that the vault prolapse will not occur. This is a very good step actually to prevent the vault prolapse.
Dr. Durga,
Namaste, Sandesh. Sudesh.
Ma'am, how are you, ma'am?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm hearing you after a long time. Very nice session, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice to see you always.
Yeah.
Ma'am, Dr. Durga Bhanusali from NIA wants to know what is the treatment of post-hysterectomy mood swings, which is commonly seen in many patients.
See, post-hysterectomy mood swings are part of menopause. It's not a complication of hysterectomy. Even if the patient had normal menopause, even then mood swings will be there. One is, see, the current lifestyle is in such a way that empty nest syndrome, because only husband and wife will be there. If the husband also passes away, then only wife will be there. Children most often do not stay with their parents, leave about the grandchildren. They may be there. Some of the couples even they won't opt for children nowadays. So naturally, a lone lady or a lady with only her husband will experience all these things. Like olden days, if she was with her children, with her daughter-in-laws, with her grandchildren, all these complications are very minimal. One, and by evening, usually in the southern part of India, the trend is by evening 6, like 5, 4, 5 o'clock, they will walk with their friends to nearby temples. In olden days, I am talking, not of today's condition. They will have a long walk to the nearby temple. They will listen to the Purana Pravachanas there, where they will share their experiences or woes or their sorrows with their friends. So it's their friends will also share their experiences, their complaints about their sons and daughter-in-laws sometimes, or their son-in-laws, etc. There's exchange of view or exchange of sorrows, we can say. So that is a counseling being taking place. Then at this particular 40, 45, 50 years of age, Tambula Charvana is said. So this Tambula is nothing but a mixture of Nagavalli Patra, having good appetite, then lavang, it's an appetizing activity. It's also it's a virechaka in the sense it's a, I can say uh, it relieves the constipation rather than virechaka. It relieves constipation. It improves the intestinal motility rather. Then puga is a good tonic. Then it is mixed with so many varieties of mouth freshening agents, the dental, the agents or the drugs which will take care of oral health as well. Then it is mixed with the uh, lime, lime supplementation, and some of them are even having some impact on manas, right? So all this Purana Shravana, that is Tattvavajaya Chikitsa, counseling with the friends or mixing with the friends, their own group of friends, their own age friends. So that is uh, again a counseling kind of thing. So all these used to help our elderly ladies from not getting the menopausal or perimenopausal symptoms. Now all these are missing. That is why all the menopausal symptoms are becoming prominent and they are troubling as problems. Otherwise, in Ayurvedic classics, postmenopausal complications or problems do not have a reference for this particular reason. Then now the current scenario, we have to engage the ladies with the assurance, yoga, pranayama, with some activities, social activities they can start. If they have forgotten their hobbies, which they were very much passionate before marriage or in their younger days, and after that, if they have not, they could not give time because of their family responsibilities, it is the right time to restart their hobbies. If they have lost touch with their friends, it is the time to have again link with their friends, like with now social groups, we have WhatsApp groups, we have with high school friends, college friends, all friends, we will again meet and start uh, kindling some interest of life. So that is the way how we can manage mood swings without medication. Of course, we have medication, Medhya Dravyas, everything, which you all know. I think I was a little lengthy in answering.
Dr. Suresh sir wants to know what are the post-operative treatment in Ayurvedic medicine.
Actually, post-operative treatment, we start with antibiotics for 3 to 5 days. We give 5 days post-operative antibiotics. After that, usually we continue with Riflagogulu and Gandakrasayana for another 15 to 20 days, depending on the wound, health of the wound. Then after that, like patient needs post-convalescence period, this is any general tonic, maybe Ashwagandha Shatavari. If the wound is having any white discharge or from the vaginal cuff, if there are any discharges, irritation, infection chances, or inflammation signs in the wound, Varunadi Kashaya we add, or any Ashwagandha Leha, one general tonic. Ashwagandha
Ma'am,
Leha.
okay, ma'am. Dr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta sir wants to know: can we use of cotton thread for lying uterine pedicle instead of Vicryl?
I did not get the question. Will
Ma'am,
you repeat?
can we use of cotton thread for lying uterine pedicle instead of Vicryl?
No, cotton thread will act as a foreign body when it is left inside. For the specimen side, you can use this cotton thread. But earlier they were using. I never used this cotton thread. I do not recommend even.
Okay. Dr. Amitabh Bachchan Kumar Singh sir wants to know: what is the management of vault prolapse?
Vault prolapse is a surgical condition, Surgery. Again, you need to go for that. It is Prestrum sine yoni. That is why to prevent, we have a lot of steps while doing surgery. But once vault prolapse is there, you cannot do anything. Uterine prolapse, of course, we tried with Lajjalukalka and Kshiraduma, Chatapushpa Taila, Mushika Taila. We have several options. But for vault prolapse, nothing works. Nothing works. Lajjalukalka being hygroscopic, it absorbs the moisture from the vaginal canal. While the treatment is on, patient feels very much symptomatic improvement. But once the condition reverts back to normal after some 1 week, if you give the treatment, patient may experience the improvement for 2 to 3 months. After that, again, she comes with the same complaint. Vault prolapse without surgery, it is difficult. One Chandraprabha is empiric treatment. Maybe to certain extent, the strength of these tissues may be regained. Chandraprabha with Ashwagandha is the combination what we give usually.
And Dr. Himadri Mudgal from NIA, she's asking that what is the reason behind preservation of ovary in self-injectomy in ectopic pregnancy?
Ovary, there are incidences where the ovum has traversed from one side to another. So contralateral traversing of ovum has been identified. So instead of one ovary, one tube, 2 ovary, 1 tube improves the chances of conception, since the traversing is noted and recorded. That is the reason why ovary is preserved. One. Second thing, by chance, next time also, if anything goes wrong, ovarian tissue becomes diseased, then probably at least from this ovary they can retrieve some ovum. That is also there.
Okay, ma'am. Dr. Durga has one more question. In post-hysterectomy period, after how much duration patients can be advised to do yoga?
Usually we say no yoga for 3 months.
Okay. Ma'am, Dr. Shraddha Shahu from NIA wants to know: can we prevent hysterectomy in fibroid uterus and manage by Ayurvedic medications?
That is what I replied in detail earlier.
Okay.
Symptomatic relief in all sizes, mostly it is possible, except that where the fibroid is in the in the submucosal layer, where it is indenting the endometrial cavity, disturbing the endometrial cavity, symptomatic relief is doubtful. I will not assure the patient that I can give you 100% relief. In all other conditions, you can think of. Submucosal is difficult.
Dr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta sir wants to know: post-hysterectomy complication, uretrovaginal fistula. What is the line of treatment?
Oh, I have never come across such a case, my dear, so I cannot answer. It is repair surgery. Conservative
Okay.
management, I don't know for that. That should I have not come across that so far. And wherever there is a fistulous tract, keeping the bladder drained continuously for 1 month and all is one line of management. We're hoping that the fistula may heal by itself. right? Then since you are from surgery department, Nadi Vrana Chikitsa, you may opt for Nadi Vrana Chikitsa, second option, theoretical, hypothetical, I'm telling, no practical experience of this. Third thing is surgery.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, Dr. Pratibha Malak wants to know, in fibroid condition, it is necessary to do hysterectomy or we can manage it with Ayurvedic treatment?
That is what I answered twice earlier. Did they join now?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, Dr. Ankit Pandey wants to know, ma'am, it is possible to get actual effect of Moshika tail and can we prepare it as it mentioned in our classics?
Yeah, Moshika Thaila is mentioned in our classics. Several studies have been published on this Moshika Thaila, but all medicines to certain extent up to second degree prolapse, everything works. Provided patient also should cooperate by not having the activities of increasing intra-abdominal pressure, like of vomiting, lifting heavy weights, straining on stools, constipation, avoiding constipation, etc. And you can give additional support by Chandraprabha, etc., etc. Others, I don't say very much useful.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Many of scholars and teachers, seniors are congratulating you and saying thanking to you, ma'am. Now I request to professor. There are no many questions are there, ma'am.
Okay.
Now I request to Professor P. Hemanta sir for concluding remarks. Professor P. Hemanta Kumar sir. Hemant.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. I think surgery is over without complications and
Okay.
with great success. And first of all, I really thankful to you, madam, for accepting our invitation to enrich knowledge of abdominal hysterectomy with your practical experience. That is most appreciable. And once again, I congratulate for your nice presentation and especially for PG and PhD scholars of Shalatantra, Prasuti and other Ayurvedic fraternity. They enjoyed, they asked about various questions regarding hysterectomy related procedures, complications and management excellently. And once again, I'm thankful to madam for valuable time. I think you are practice time now. I know that. Really, I'm thankful for sharing your knowledge, and really, it is appreciable. I'm saying about Mamata madam. It is another Premavati Tiwari madam.
Oh
And I
no!
really, really, why? Because madam, I know that madam students, they are practical oriented students. They're practicing throughout India individually of all ops and gynae surgeries, and real appreciating your contribution towards Prasuti Tantra and Sri Roga. And once again, I thankful to madam for sharing your knowledge. Definitely in future also, I think vaginal hysterectomy also you must to do with anesthesia, and we will wait for in I think within short we will go for that session also. And once again, I thankful to Dr. Hemanta Shrikani team for University for regularly arranging these type of programs in the platform, and our National Sister Association members regularly they attending and gradually increasing our registration members and strength, and really it is a very good sign for Ayurvedic surgery. And I thankful to all senior teachers, my colleagues, friends and students for regularly attending this program. Once again, I thankful to all. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Hemant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't compare
Thank.
me, madam. Don't know. No. Whatever we are, it is the blessings of